All right, welcome everybody to another week of On the Contrary, another pre-recorded version because we had some live stream issues, but we are here taking you through all the important information you need to know for week 17, all the contrarian thoughts we've trained our minds for all year. This is the time where they all pay off. Week 17, where it goes sideways. I'm Chris Spags, joined today by one of the top players in the world, one of the founders of Awesemo.com. It's named for him, so he should be. His name is Alex Baker. How you doing, Alex?
Hey, what's up, man? Excited to talk week 17. That's always the one that's really tricky, and you can't just plug in the same guys you've been playing all season. And I'm glad to be on here with Evan. Help us break it all down.
And speaking of Evan, we do have him right here. One of the senior editors over at RotoWorld. His matchups column, again, is something you just need to read every week as long as it exists through the playoffs. Evan Silva. How you doing, Evan? How was your Christmas?
Spags, it was great. I'm glad to be back, and hopefully we can continue this show into the playoffs, which we were actually talking about before. And I wanted to bring up a question to Awesemo about this specifically, because I know that in the playoffs on the smaller slates, certainly, and good practice for the smaller slates is, playing the one game slates, which I seem to always lose on. Just playing the straight one game, like primetime game slates. And I probably need to put more time into just figuring out how to play them. That might be my problem. Although just picking Doug Martin would have worked last week, but I never wanted to pick Martin. But how much of your process is going into digging really deep and trying to find, that super sleeper and we've talked about them over the course of the year, and we've missed on most of them, but that is the way that it's supposed to be, because they're low probability punts. We talked about JJ Nelson one week. Last week we talked about Alex Erickson and Andy Jones. We've talked about Matt Lacoste and Anthony Ferkser and, all these guys that are super cheap that, hey, if they do hit, they give us an edge. But there's a reason that they cost nothing. It's because they're low probability plays and they're unlikely to hit, So how much of your process is going into finding that, and then, especially on the small slates, is that a big, or are you just trying to play hey, I'm trying to fit in, Deshaun Hamilton and, Lindsey and, maybe one of the quarterbacks and, Jalen Richard might have a shot, the common guys, or how much of your process is just going into, on Monday night, I wanted to play Brian Parker because Matt Lacoste was out, which didn't work. Yeah. And FanDuel, you're welcome for my donation, but how much is of your process is trying to find the lowest, uncommon denominator and putting that into your lineup?
I think it's really interesting in practice to go through and try to figure out all these guys you've never heard of and whether they're going to be good in DFS. But the truth about DFS is that the guys with the higher projections, the higher the projection is, the more relevant they are. And a lot of it's just finding guys who are pretty good that are just going overlooked for some reason. And that's when ownership projections can really help, is you're trying to find some guy that you like that's under-owned, or some guy you don't like that's highly owned. And the real edge in DFS is exploiting that if you're sharp enough to kind of detect where the public is off. As far as finding guys that haven't really played much that might go off, that can be a lot trickier endeavor, as we found out last week with our contrarian wide receiver picks. But it's always fun trying to
you're contrarian.
Oh yeah.
Mine was great for the record. Just I don't want to be a part of this debate. We should talk though real fast about your guys' bet, because I do think that's something, which is we are talking about the Alex Erickson versus Andy Jones debate. Those were both Alex and Evan's picks last week. Evan had Alex Erickson for the Bengals. Alex had, it's a little bit confusing because your name is Alex and you didn't have the Alex. Alex had Andy Jones. And there was a side bet made, which, Alex, I guess, do you want to share what the payoff that we discussed is going to be? Because unfortunately, your guy, Andy Jones, did not come through for you.
Yeah, I made the mistake of agreeing to this bet actually instigating the bet and not determining the terms
He did.
until
He
afterwards.
He came at me.
So you shoot at the king, you best not miss.
Apparently, I'm doing a power hour on air. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But hopefully, I'll be in good enough form to give you my picks at the end.
So something to keep an eye out for. As Evan mentioned, we will be doing these shows in the playoffs. And for the first one to kick off our playoff coverage, we'll have Alex doing a power hour because this is a half show, half fraternity house, apparently is what we're trying to turn it into. But no, that seems like a good payoff to me. I guess when you're talking about these guys in a week like this, Alex, like we have Dwayne Washington, and spoiler alert, we'll talk more about him. He's projected to be the highest owned running back on the slate, highest owned player on the slate at $3K because he is the because he is the running back in New Orleans, and New Orleans is not going to play their starters, according to reports, or at least not play them very much. So how do you handle a situation like that, Alex, where Dwayne Washington, this might be the first time you've thought about rostering him all year, and now he's stepping into a role, but he's not the guy, and it's a different role? How do you kind of do that mental gymnastics there?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of work sifting through all the reports to figure out who's going to play. You're alluding to this fact that Kamara and Ingram aren't going to play that much. I haven't read any reports. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what they say?
So the early things I've seen, and Evan might have seen more than me, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but what I saw is that Shawn Payne regretted a couple of years ago when the Saints were in the playoffs, and he's mentioned a couple of times, and I think mentioned it to reporters over the last maybe week and a half or so, that he had guys who got hurt, got banged up. He didn't want to make that mistake again. So he's going to try to rest his guys more. Now we have the announcement before we started this video. Teddy Bridgewater is starting, so the assumption is there'll be some trickle down there. Evan, have you heard anything more about the Saints situation that would make you think that we might not see any Kamara or Ingram?
No, I mean, I think we're going to probably see a little bit of both. We just did Swolecast too, and Tuttle mentioned that, and Tuttle's one of the best players, in the world. And he mentioned that Dwayne Washington was going to be really popular as well. And I was like, what? Like I had not heard that, because I actually this week I didn't even listen to any DFS shows. I didn't listen to any DFS shows this week. I did one with Rich Rebar and Eric Crane on Wednesday night, and Dwayne Washington never came up. And then on Friday, earlier today, Tuttle brought up that I guess people were talking about Dwayne Washington. Look, I'm all about the opportunity. For running backs, opportunity takes precedence over everything. And if the opportunity is there, he could be great. I never would have played C.J. Anderson last week. Did you guys play any C.J. Anderson last week?
I wanted to, but I don't think he was on the slate on DraftKings or FanDuel. So, fortunately, I had to swap Todd Gurley out for Kamara.
Oh, he wasn't even available on DK?
He was available on DK. It just he might already had guys locked in there because I had like Jamal Williams and Elijah McGuire and McCaffrey taking up a lot of my running back slots. So I didn't even have a room to get there at all. But he was there. You just would have had out of a weird swap where you must have had Gurley in, and then you would have had to just go down. I think would have been the way it would have worked.
Yeah, but I mean, if you thought that he was a great play, then you would have structured your approach around that, right? And which we've talked about multiple times.
Yeah.
On the show, we've talked about it with Eckler 1 week, and then we talked about it with I don't know, it's like 2 weeks ago. I can't remember who it was, but maybe Jalen Samuels or something. I can't remember. But if you really believe that he was a good play, then you make proper adjustments, and you know what I'm saying.
The Gurley news didn't come out until too late, I think, because I was also playing him in season long, and I think that made it a weird kind of thing where my friend thought Gurley was in until maybe halftime. I think is when the news officially came that he was rolled out.
Yeah, Jay Glazer reported that morning, and I tweeted it out because I just pulled Jay Glazer's tweet or Jay Glazer's quote and put it on Twitter that if Todd Gurley was feeling as good today as he was yesterday, Todd Gurley was going to play. If not, it would be C.J. Anderson, which to me, that's not enough to have confidence in C.J. Anderson. Just Jay Glazer passing along, secondhand coach speak. So, but all right. But I mean, either way, I think that it'll be interesting. Like, how highly owned will C.J. Anderson be this particular?
Yeah, here's the thing with our ownership projections is we updated them this morning before Gurley was ruled out. So we're going to have to take another look at that. I think I haven't even looked at his salary yet. We just saw the news. With Dwayne Washington, I'm kind of worried what Evan says is going to be true. It's going to be a mix of Ingram, Kamara, and Washington. I was looking at some of the Week 17 game logs last year. There was one where Philadelphia had the number 1 seed locked up. They played their starters for about like 1/3 of the game, and then they swapped to the reserves. And that's a really murky situation for rostering anyone in fantasy. So I might just avoid the Saints. 3K is cheap enough to take a shot, but I'm not like super optimistic about it.
I guess while we're talking about this, we might as well talk about Teddy Bridgewater's prospects. He's a guy who's looked good in the stints that he's had playing this year. He's I think a free agent again. I'm not sure about that offhand.
Yes,
though.
he is. Yes, he is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I think they said this might be a possible audition week for him as well. How are you feeling about Teddy Bridgewater's prospects this week, Evan, filling in for Drew Brees?
I mean, no. I don't. I mean, I love Teddy Bridgewater. He looked great in the preseason. He didn't play in the preseason for the Saints, though. He played in the preseason for the Jets. And he hasn't played all year, and he's going to be throwing to Kevin Arnold and Austin Carr and Simi Cobbs.
I think Kevin Arnold is from the Wonder Years. Dan Arnold.
yeah, Kevin Arnold and Simi Cobbs. I mean, start someone else, play someone else.
Yeah, that's fair. And on the other side of this game, while we're talking about it, we do have Kyle Allen starting for the heroic Taylor Heineke, who was my guy last week. We talked a bit about my Deshaun Watson was my adult pick. Taylor Heineke was my emotional pick. He threw over 50 passes last week on a gimpy arm. I feel like Taylor Heineke deserves a shout out. I presume, Evan, you think we're not going to see much Christian McCaffrey this week either?
Yeah, I do not. I'm looking at exactly. Okay, so I guess I'm trying to figure out why people would want to play Dwayne Washington and watch him go off for 27 touches and 180 yards and 3 touchdowns on Sunday. Okay, he actually was a spark freak. I kind of like him, not really, but all right. So the assumption, I guess, would be that they are not going to play Ingram or Kamara, and that they are not going to make any additions to the 53 before Sunday. So their only running back left would be Dwayne Washington. That would be, I think, the assumption that people are making. If that does happen, then yeah, I think that Dwayne Washington would be in a very good spot. They don't even have a running back on their practice squad. So he would be the only guy left. So, hey, listen, if you nail that projection, that Kamara and Ingram are straight up not going to play, and they're not going to give any carries to Zach Line, or use Taysom Hill at fullback or at running back, which, I mean, they're not – those are – those sound crazy, but they're not crazy for Week 17 game, then your Dwayne Washington play could really work out.
Yeah, seems like a risky one. I mean, overall, if the ownership is right, and I guess we'll see how the rest of the days go. Obviously, we'll have updates on ownership at Osmo.com as we go. But for right now, he is projected to be the chalk player of the week at 32.7%. We're going to go through the rest of the games as well, obviously. But real fast, we are sponsored by FantasyDraft. We appreciate their support. FantasyDraft has lower contest fees than the other major providers, and they pay out a minimum of the 25% of players. So it's a great way to build your bankroll if you're a newer player. Not as many sharp players on there. So it's a good way to kind of get some money, build your bankroll, be better at all the DFS sites. Use promo code Contrary. You'll get $5 free on your first deposit. And again, freebies like these are what you want as a newer player. Take advantage of it. Every site who's new and looking for a foothold is offering special deals out there. This is no exception. So go download Fantasy Draft either from the App Store or go to FantasyDraft.com. Use promo code Contrary for that $5. Alex, any Fantasy Draft thoughts real fast?
Yeah, if you're an up-and-coming player, you should just be spreading out your bankroll to as many different sites as you can fit in. One of the great things about NFL is you have the news far enough in advance that you can play on a lot of different sites. So you should be playing on Fantasy Draft for sure. They have big enough prize pools to get your attention, and I think the fields are pretty soft, so it's ripe for playing there.
Yep. So use that promo code Contrary. Get $5 on a deposit right now. Go ahead, join. Support the things that support us. That's one of the things we ask you to do here in exchange for all the genius that comes out of both Evan and Alex's mouths and occasionally, very sporadically, mine. Let's go Kansas City. This is a team who does have something to play for, and we'll try to note these in the games that we talk about because it is an important part of the equation, obviously. Kansas City at home versus Oakland. They have the highest team total of the week at 33.3. Spencer Ware is expected back. Damien Williams just re-signed to a big deal. Travis Kelce could get the receiving yards record for a tight end with 54 yards. He's also projected to be the chalkiest tight end of the week at 26% expected ownership. Alex, what are you doing with Travis Kelce here? It's a big week for him. He could set some records. He played really well versus Oakland a couple of weeks ago when Tyreek Hill faltered. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, I think this is definitely the team of the week to target. They have the highest team total, I believe. They have something to play for, and they should be able to put up enough fantasy points in the first three quarters if the game isn't super close that you're going to be satisfied with the results. So I think Kelce, Hill, Mahomes, those are all guys in play. The only caveat I have is that if Oakland doesn't put up enough points or much resistance, then you're probably not going to win with like a big stack from Kansas City. So you make sure you have an Oakland player. But if too many people are on the stack, then it may make sense to go elsewhere if you don't really expect this game to be close.
Evan, how are you feeling about this one? We have Kansas City playing for something, Oakland really playing for pride in a way which seems surprising.
Yeah, it's a hammer drop game for the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have lost 2 in a row, man. You know, like you don't want to be, and they have a bye. They're likely to have a bye, I should say. If they lose this game, they might lose their bye. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they're going to lose the game. I mean, I think it's like 92% or something that they get the first round bye, and but like you don't want to, if you don't want to put yourself in, you want to play your best football. You just lost 2 games in a row, man. Like you had control of that Chargers game and you absolutely blew it at the end. I mean, the Chiefs were the better team in that game. I mean, there's no doubt in any person who watched that game's mind. Like the Chiefs controlled that game, but then they got dominated in Seattle. I mean, Seattle was the better team, I thought, in that game. So they have a lot on the line here they're very incentivized to play their absolute best game. And I think that we will get their best game against them. They also have been just unbelievable at home. They have the best home field advantage in the NFL. And the Raiders have lopsided road game splits where they're awful on the road. They've had some good games at home. They beat the Colts. They beat the Browns. No, they lost to the Colts, but they put up like 28 on the Colts. They beat the Browns 45-42 at home. They beat the freaking Steelers at home. We just saw them beat the Broncos in an oil spill at home. So the Raiders, I mean, and this is a classic, Ace Rothstein letdown spot, coming off the primetime win at home, going on the road to Kansas City, should just get slaughtered. And, and then it comes down to, hey, how are we going to apply this to our DFS lineups? Mahomes, of course, Kelce going for records, etc. Tyreek, this is his redemption game. He had 13 yards in the game against the Raiders. 13 yards. By far his fewest all season. Dropped the ball, that would have gone for like a 52-yard touchdown, etc. So, and I mean, his air yards are elite, still elite. He's number 3 in Josh Hermsmeyer's air yards by low model, which I know will increase his projection in Alex Baker's model as well. So, but I think that the Chiefs, are a great team to invest in. The running backs, I think it's going to be a committee. I mean, I think that Spencer Ware is going to play. Dudes who practice fully play.
Yeah, I agree. Damien Williams has looked good, though. It seems like it's hard to take that role away from him completely.
I have never seen, and I've watched Damien Williams throughout his career since he came into the NFL, because I remember, because I was kind of intrigued by him because he was undrafted out of Oklahoma. He played, I want to say he played behind DeMarco Murray, I want to say. He's been around for a while. And he he had a great like athletic profile, but he looked terrible on the field. But this year with Kansas City, he's truly looked excellent on the field. He's ran with a lot more burst and explosion, power. He's always been pretty good in the passing game. I love Damien Williams. The issue is that, Spencer Ware was out touching him before Spencer Ware went down.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Alex, any interest on the Oakland guys running back? Anybody there? Jared Cook's a little banged up, but he's been good versus Kansas City in the past.
Always a little bit interested in Jalen Richard, as you guys know, especially on DraftKings where you get the PPR. Hasn't really paid off in a big game yet, but he's had a string of solid performances in the low teens. So I think that there's some potential there. And you also get a nice correlation that if Kansas City's up, then he might see a little bit more work. As far as other players, I think the only other players that you can really go to are Jordy Nelson, Seth Roberts, and Jared Cook, but I'm not super keen on any of those guys this week.
Evan, how about you? Anybody on Oakland? Maybe a little Doug Martin after you missed out on him on Monday night?
Yeah, just go chase those points. Yeah, that
always works out well with Doug Martin in particular.
Right. Doug Martin just running into the 2-touchdown road dog buzzsaw. That's
Contrarian spot. That's what the show's all about, Evan.
Right. I have to remind myself of that. But no, I like Jordy. Jordy he's averaged 9 targets per game over his last 4. He had 10 for 97 when these teams played a couple of weeks ago. They've started to scale back Jared Cook. Jared Cook's snaps were like, they've messed with his playing time like all year. It's really frustrating. So in the second half, I was on him like in the first half of the season. And then the second half of the season, I just never play him. So I've missed out on Jared Cook's like big games in the second half of the year because I'm like, what are they doing with his playing time? And they did it again last week. So I think that the most confident option is Jordy. This also could be his last NFL game. Let me ask you this. I know you guys are multi-sport DFS players, and were you guys on – how hard did you guys go on Qb's last game? Was it against the Jazz? It was like wasn't it against the Jazz? Yeah. So it was like he was playing like one of the best defenses in the NBA, slowest paced game, but you were betting straight on a narrative. And if you hit that, like you had to have that. Can you guys talk about that?
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, some narratives are for sure true. And we've seen it in some retirement games, Qb's, where he just shot the ball a ton. The refs were cutting him a lot of slack too. They're kind of in on it. Like in the last play, he like shoved Gordon Hayward out of the way to get the ball, and he's wide open because of that, and he wasn't called for a foul or anything. Derek Jeter, he was in his retirement game, and the pitchers were pitching him like easy balls right over the middle for him to hit the home run, and he did. So it really depends on the narrative. Jordy Nelson, it's harder to build a narrative since he hasn't really announced retirement yet. But there are some other narratives this week that I'm definitely going to be keying in on as important factors.
Yeah, I actually want to hear more about your narratives in a second, Alex. But yeah, I feel similarly. I think basketball too is a little bit different just because you can force usage in a way. With football, obviously, it's more. There's still moving pieces that require that usage to occur. So I think that would be my concern there. But Jordy's been highly targeted. I think Jordy's a credible play regardless of the retirement things for the reasons you guys said. The price makes sense. The targets have been there. Who else are they going to throw to?
All right, but guys, like to be clear, my question was what was your exposure? I don't want to hear about the pros and cons. Like, did you actually play Qb that day? Did you actually play? I didn't play him that day, and I remember Levitan didn't play him that day. And so I want to know, did you guys play him that day?
I had him like a pretty fair amount, but I wasn't like all in like I should have been in retrospect.
Right.
Yeah, I was the same thing. I was more naive then. I think now I would have probably seized on a little more because to me, like usage is what I care about. And a guy getting like all the Lakers I played last night because LeBron's out. So that's sort of that vacuum opens it up. But yeah, I think now you would because you just know he's Qb. I mean, I think DFS is a more innocent time back then too. Now we know these things for the most part.
I think that's perfectly said. Like, I think that at that time I was like, no, this is stupid. Like, I'm not chasing this narrative, I'm not playing this old dude who, has like no shooting efficiency against the freaking Jazz in the slowest paced game. I'm not doing that. I'm not falling victim to that. And then, but today I'd be like, oh, hell yeah, I don't care about any of that. Like, I don't care. I don't care, so it's very interesting. That was 2-3 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago, but we've all, progressed probably as players.
Not only that, but I bet there'd be people who would like play whoever's Kobe's teammate because they'll be like, well, I got to pivot off of Kobe. Like the level of thought that goes into each lineup is so far ahead now compared to where it was even 2 years ago. That's why it's harder to be a profitable player. You need shows like this one, I guess, hopefully. Alex, give me another narrative spot then. You talked about a couple narrative spots you're curious about.
Well, I've mentioned one with the Kelsey record. I'm not as keen on narratives in games where there's something to play for because I feel like they're going to chew clock and stuff, not try to give them the record. One spot that I'm really keen in on is Davante Adams going up against Detroit. It's kind of like a flex goal because he needs a certain amount of receptions, which isn't that much, to beat the single season Packers record. But he needs like 140 yards to beat the receiving yards record, that's a lot to project for someone in a game. He'd basically need to see like 20 targets or something absurd. Like I don't know if that's super likely, but I think that he will
like the 18 that he had last week.
Well, I mean, Rodgers threw the ball 55 times last week. Like the chance that he's throwing 55 times this week isn't like that high, but I think they'll definitely feed him the rock whenever they can.
I would agree with you. And also Davante Adams is projected to be one of the highest owned wide receivers right now at 23.7%. Jamal Williams, one of the highest projected owned running backs, 21.5%. We talked about on the show last week. I loved Green Bay last week. There have been some more quotes after that game about how they're playing to give Joe Philbin a fair shot at the coaching job and all that. Seems like he has some good locker room support. Evan, how are you feeling about Adams' knee injury and I guess the Packers' prospects overall?
Yeah, not worried about the knee injury, until, new information could change that. But as of what we know right now, I'm not worried about the knee injury. 134 yards to pass Jordan Nelson for the most in franchise history, and 2 catches to pass Sterling Sharp. So, and got 18 targets last week. I know that, if you adjust it for, that was the most pass attempts, as Alex mentioned, that was the most pass attempts that Aaron Rodgers has had all year. That's why you see guys like, MVS and ESP popping up for big games. Don't chase that stuff. That's Jamal Williams had 9 targets. You can't chase that stuff and especially if you look at their Week 17 opponent, the Lions, who played the slowest place in the NFL. Teams that play the Lions average like 33 pass attempts. So you're bringing it down by like 20, 22 pass attempts, and it's not realistic. But I think it is realistic for Adams because he cares about these records. Aaron Rodgers cares about these records. This team is going all out to win. They're giving Joe Philbin the fair shake, and they're playing this dead Lions team that is a dome team traveling to Lambeau in, essentially January. So they have a lot of and just placed their 3rd starting defensive lineman on injured reserve. So yeah, I'm all about the Packers and specifically Jamal Williams and Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers as well.
Yeah, I agree. That all makes sense there. Alex, who are you running it back with on Detroit? And is it Andy Jones?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, before you click the lock button on Davante Adams, make sure to click the like button on our video.
Please.
Please. Yes.
But yeah, I think this is a situation where you don't have to run it back with anyone because if you really buy into this narrative, it's kind of irrelevant how Detroit performs. They're going to be feeding him the rock. They're not going to be chewing clock. So the main thing I would stress is that if you think that this narrative holds water, you want to devalue the other guys on the Packers, like Jamal Williams and Valdez-Scantling, because if they're feeding Adams the rock, then it's going to be less to go around for everyone else.
Yeah, that all checks out to me. Yeah, nothing else to note in this game. Valdez-Scantling did have a ton of targets last week, but as we mentioned, could be a pretty inflated number with Rodgers throwing a ton and a bit of overtime in that game as well. How about the team they played last week, the Jets, going into a matchup with New England? They are playing for their bye, technically, even though they can still get that bye in a million different ways. They could get home field advantage, though, with a win if some other teams lose as well. New England is one of the highest team totals of the week, 29.3 implied points. And on the Jets side, we do have Robbie Anderson and Elijah McGuire coming off of a very chalky week in which they were both smash successes, I would say. Alex, what are you doing with this game? Anybody you're looking at on the Patriots side or the Jets side?
I got burned pretty hard last week by Robbie Anderson, so I'm definitely going to look at him. But I see that his price is $5,600, and I guess, Curse is out this week, which is kind of interesting because the rest of the wide receiving core is pretty bad. But I don't like the team's chances overall. And on the Patriots side, I see a couple of guys you could go with Gronk mainly. But the prices are a little bit too high for me this week to be going there.
Evan, what do you think about this one? The Jets been looking pretty feisty, but they're getting New England, who actually has something to play for in New England.
Yeah, Gronk. How much do you adjust up in your model points for blocking ability?
Probably
not enough.
I guess not. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not factoring his tackling ability in. That's for sure.
Well, yeah. Oh, man, that was really bad. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really clear, the way to kind of, if you're going to go with New England guys, it's really clear. Like Sony Michel, the game sets up perfectly for him. I mean, I think that this team, the Patriots are opponent-based game planners, right? They always have been. And, I mean, I say this and it sounds like so simpleton-ish, but most teams are not this way. They're not this way. They're not like, we're going to try to attack our opponent's weaknesses. We are going most teams are like, we're going to do what we do and we're going to see if they're going to stop us. That's how most teams are. The Patriots are much different. They're like, hey, we're going to try to find, where are you bad? And we're going to attack that until you stop us, And the Jets are bad in run defense. And if you look ahead to – Jets are kind of bad in everything. But if you look ahead to the playoffs and you look at who are the most dangerous teams in the AFC that are definitely going to the playoffs, who are the most dangerous teams? What do you guys think? Certainly Chiefs, okay? The Chiefs are a given, right? Chiefs are very dangerous. They could pour 40 on anybody. I think that the other most dangerous team might be the Chargers, okay? Where are they weakest? Well, they lost a bunch of dudes on the interior like Denzel Perryman and Corey Littett and Kaiser White, okay? So, and you can run on them. We saw the Ravens Gus Edwards just gashed them up the middle last week. The Ravens beat them at home with the running game. And so, and the Patriots have their number 3 in adjusted line yards at Football Outsiders in terms of their offensive line run blocking. And they've allowed the fewest tackles for losses in the NFL with their offensive line on run plays. So it makes a lot of sense for them, especially, Gronkowski's on his last legs. Gordon's gone. Chris Hogan, something went wrong there this year. It makes sense for them to become a run-first team. And I understand that that's not the way to win in the NFL. It's not a sustainable way to win in the NFL. But that's where their strengths are, and that's where the weaknesses are of the best teams in the AFC. What do you guys think about that?
I think I'm with you on that. I think to me, the Patriots remind me of an old Bill Simmons thing, and not because it's a Patriots thing, but and this might be a little bit risque, I guess, in 2018, almost 2019, but he would talk about the concept of a Milton Berle game. It was like a famous comedian, if you're a younger person out there, who was known for having a legendarily large genitals. I'm sorry to be bringing up large genitals for the second straight week, but he would talk about how the urban legend was that Milton Berle, in some sort of measuring contest with other men, would pull out just enough to beat the other guy. And he would talk about the games as though they were Milton Berle games. And for some reason, that analogy always stuck with me. And I feel like that's what the Patriots do better than anybody, is they'll pull out just enough to win any competition. And that's sort of what this is to me. You just handed Sony Michel 20 times. What else do you have to do besides cover Robbie Anderson? I don't know. Alex, what do you think about both Milton Berle and this game?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that they have 3 running backs that are all getting pretty significant work in White, Burkhead, and Michel. So, I mean, there are definitely good chances Michel could have a good week running 20 times and getting in the end zone. But the more likely scenario is that he gets the ball between 12, 15 times. Burkhead gets the ball 5 to 8 times. White gets a couple runs. So I just don't really.
So it sounds like you're on the Jets to dominate this game.
I mean, how many rushing attempts do you think they're going to get? I don't know. I mean, well, anyway, the bottom line is Michel is 5,200 on DraftKings. He is 7,200 on FanDuel. So you're paying top dollar on FanDuel and a pretty high amount on DraftKings for a guy who's very limited in one area of the game.
Yeah, sorry, they're vacuuming in my hallway right now as we do this, which of course is fantastic timing. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying about the situation overall. I think to me, Sony Michel grades out as a good enough play where I want some exposure to him, and he's probably going to be my contrarian running back pick of the week. But I think I would agree that going after Anderson and McGuire with their prices up would probably not be a wise move here. Let's go to another game with a guy who was very successful last week, a team with something to play for. We have Pittsburgh playing the Bengals at home. Antonio Brown's currently questionable, but he's projected for 20% ownership almost. We also have James Conner expected back, probably splitting some carries with Jalen Samuels. Who knows how that'll shake out. Alex, what do you think about the Steelers this week? They're priced up again, but they do have a very high team total, and they are one of few teams who actually have something to play for.
Well, if Antonio Brown's out, that's going to change a lot. I'm assuming that he's going to play as of now. You'll know by Sunday, so it's not really worth debating, but I don't think that there's going to be much of a committee in the backfield. Pittsburgh's MO is running one guy out every single snap. I think the guy is Connor. I don't think Samuels has really shown any sort of talent. He's had really good games, but I don't know if they've been so out of this world that he's going to change the hierarchy. And Connor, I think by all accounts, he's ready to play. So I really like his chances this week in a game where Steelers are going to probably rush a lot more than they have been with a weak opponent, and also a game that they should be trying pretty hard to win.
Yeah, that does check out to me. Evan, how are you feeling about this one? Do you think Pittsburgh is going to rely on the run game here and maybe returning James Conner, or what? Is there a different approach that they could take here?
Man, betting on dudes coming off of high ankle sprains has been a losing proposition, for me for forever. So it has become a situation that I just totally avoid. I can let other people take that risk, and make my investments elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? Also, listening to the coach speak of Randy Fichtner, their OC, who doesn't even run the offense. Ben Roethlisberger does, by the way. But his comments suggested that Jalen Samuels will maintain a role in the offense. And I mean, look, I totally understand what the best analytical approach here is. Just look, what have they done historically for multiple years? Apply that to, our expectations for week 17. I totally agree with that. But that just gives me more reason to not try to invest any resources, any money, whatever, giblets, FanDuel points. I'm not trying to, season-long starts, whatever, for season-long leagues that are going to week 17. I'm not trying to invest anything into the Steelers backfield. So I will look at Ben for sure. And if AB is out, which I agree with Alex that he probably won't be out, but he may be, Juju and Vance McDonald. But all that stuff is going to be decided on Sunday for me, and I don't really know what to think right now, because to me, the notion of AB sitting wasn't even in my mind until 2 hours ago.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine him not wanting to play in a spot where their season is on the line. I mean, even if it's a very winnable one. But the Steelers have been weird this year. I think with that game where they held out Ben in the second half versus the Raiders rather. I don't know. They've done some wonky things, so who knows? But keep your eyes peeled for that. That's obviously very important news, because Antonio Brown, you're going to want to have in your lineups if he's available, and you'll want to sit him if he's not. I'll go put myself on a limb with that one, I guess. Let's talk about a guy who we know is out now, Todd Gurley. The Niners heading into a game with the Rams. He is out. CJ Anderson currently projected for just 5% ownership, but that should trickle up because our ownership projections were made before that news was official. What are we doing with the CJ Anderson conundrum this week, Alex? We talked about it a little up top, but give people, I guess, your more full thoughts about the Rams prospects.
So just looking at his salary, $6,200 on FanDuel and $5,400 on DraftKings, that makes him look like a better play on FanDuel. The Rams should be trying to win the game to secure their home field advantage. So that checks out pretty well. San Francisco is I don't think it'll be a walk in the park, so they might have to pass the ball a decent amount in this game. So I think that CJ Anderson is viable, but I wouldn't really expect him to go out and have a Gurley-like performance like last week. But there are other guys at running back that I think are a little bit more reliable, better price that I want to go to this week.
Evan, how do you think about this one with Gurley out? Maybe Jared Goff returning to form now that he's back home and they're going to need him. Evan?
Yo, yeah. What's up? Sorry.
Talking about the Rams prospects. Gurley's obviously out. CJ Anderson might be a more popular play as the weekend goes on. And Jared Goff is back at home this week. Any love for Goff, or are you going with Anderson now that we know that he's going to be the guy getting the load?
I mean, look, every year there's this, crazy thing that happens late in the year. And it's like, we've been doing this grind for, like 3.5 months, we've been doing this grind for a really long time. Then all of a sudden this crazy thing happens. And it's like, how do we adjust to that? Do we think it's a fluke? Or do we jump on it? And to me, I was never touching CJ Anderson in any scenario last week, in any scenario. Thankfully I play primarily on FanDuel. He wasn't even on the, in the machine, he wasn't even in the he wasn't an option, thankfully, so I got away with it last week, but I never would have played him. Just never would have played him. He looked terrible in Carolina. He looks like, and he still did last week. He looks, I am not in position to call anyone fat, but he looked fat last week. He's a wide load. He's slow, but he ran with power. He ran with a lot of conviction. He ran with fresh legs. Fresh legs is something, it's a narrative thing, but I think it's absolutely true in a lot of situations. For dudes that just come up off the street, haven't gotten any carries. He looked terrible in Carolina. The Raiders thought about signing him. They're like, nah, I'm not. They're like, no, I don't. Maybe he failed their physical. I don't know. He doesn't look like a running back. He looks like James Devlin or Kyle Juszczyk, but without their athleticism. He looks terrible. But they have a great run blocking offensive line. They're number 1 in the NFL in adjusted line yards at Football Outsiders. They're top 8 in tackles for loss allowed. They don't allow penetration into their backfield. And he's facing the 49ers, who they actually have played good run defense throughout the course of the year, but in the last month or so have not been as good. They lost Reuben Foster. They've lost guys in the back end that were good run defenders, Jaquiski Tart, et cetera. And so I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do it with CJ Anderson, although I do have him penciled into my initial lineup. I'm going to want to take him out. I don't know. I hate this. It's we do all this research all year. You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden this crazy thing happens, and it's hard for me. It's legitimately hard for me.
Yeah, I get it. I think to me, the thing is this is the week to go back to Goff if he has anything left. Which I think he does. People are jumping off the train, I think, like lemmings when they see him have a couple bad games. Now he's back at home. San Francisco's been tough with Richard Sherman's side, but in general, they are worse versus the pass than they are the run. So to me, I think that's the pivot I would want to make. Alex, are you playing any Goff and any interest in Robert Woods, who has a pretty decent chunk of ownership on him?
Absolutely, yeah. I think anytime you have a top offense in Week 17 that's incentivized to win, that's definitely a spot you should be targeting. They've been one of the best passing offenses this year. The matchup isn't amazing, but I definitely like their chances. What you're going to want to do is stack it up with probably Kittle on the other side. Hope that he has that record-setting game. And if he does, then you're going to be in a really good position to win a GPP.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Evan, any interest in anybody on the Niners side for you? Alex mentioned Kittle. Kittle's playing for some milestones as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Kittle. Also, Kendrick Bourne. He's really, really cheap. The 49ers receiver core is gone. They're gone. Dante Pettis is ruled out. Marquise Goodwin is ruled out. Pierre Garçon is on IR. And their other guys are Richie James and Trent Taylor, who are kind of like rotating slot receivers. And also they lost Garrett Selleck to a concussion. He's not playing this week. So that increases the likelihood that they would play 3 receiver sets. And, running out guys that, really haven't commanded targets all year, and Kendrick Bourne kind of has. He led the team in receiving last week. It's just what I like about the 49ers this week is that it's very clear who you go after, and I'm not sure which guys are going to end up in my lineup this week, but I think I'll probably have at least one between Jeff Wilson, Bourne, and Kittle. I think that these guys are especially price adjusted for Wilson and Bourne. They're in really good position. This Rams defense is trash, and it's quite possible that the 49ers, based on the spread, are playing from behind the entire time, and these guys get elevated targets because Nick Mullins doesn't have any chemistry with the third string tight end or the fourth and fifth string receivers.
Yeah, Nick Mullins, they've been a feisty team, more feisty at home than Niners have been over the last few weeks, but they should bring it. I think they're not going to roll over and die for this Rams team, so could be some value to unearth there on that offense. Alex, any other? Go ahead.
I just want to mention Jeff Wilson, as Evan brought him up. He's definitely one of my top players of the week because last time Matt Breida was out, he got the lion's share of the workload. And he's only 4,400 on DraftKings, and he is he's 9,400 on FantasyDraft, which is comparable to DraftKings. So with that kind of pricing and the workload, even though that the team is a big dog, I still think he's going to be in a great spot to produce.
Yeah. How much is that a part of your process, though? Because they are a severe dog on the road. The matchup is good. The Rams are bad against the run. We've seen Jeff Wilson have a game where he caught a bunch of passes. One game out of 4. But how much is that a part of your process that, hey, look, he's really in kind of a theoretically bad spot on the road as a huge dog?
Yeah, it's just all about pricing out what the price should be. So I think with him, the price should be about 1K higher than it is to encompass his potential this week. So you're getting a pretty significant discount. The Niners have a team total around 20, which means they're probably going to average between 1 and 2 touchdowns. If Jeff Wilson's the one that gets in the end zone, that's going to be a pretty nice day.
There you go. And a pretty decent pivot. Wilson under 10% ownership to some of the other guys, including C.J. Anderson, who is about $1,000 more on DraftKings and will be probably higher owned by the time it's all said and done. Alex, give me another spot. I wanted to talk about Falcons at Bucks because it has one of the higher team totals, but if you're going to take us there organically, that might be helpful.
Let me bring up my crunches here.
These are all the games that have actual stakes. I think we've covered, but the
Falcons and Bucks is good. I think that Matt Ryan, he's been winning people a ton of money this year, and against a weak Tampa defense, that just makes it seem pretty likely it could happen again. Neither team really has anything to play for, which is a good thing in week 17 because you can kind of go back to the previous weeks where they also had nothing to play for to kind of anticipate what the strategy is going to be. So I think that you can really go to any piece of the offense. You can go to Julio, Hooper, Coleman, and then Sanu and Ridley should be considered kind of like fringe plays.
How about the Bucs side with Peyton Barber projected for around 20% ownership?
Yeah,
What?
I mean that's crazy to me, but he's only 3.6K, which seems like absurdly low. But the real guy, like on the Bucs side, with Deshaun Jackson doubtful, I'm expecting Chris Godwin to kind of resume his playing time from a couple of weeks ago when he was playing on about like 80 to 90% of the snaps. And with a guy who gets targeted as much as he does, even though he failed to really produce in any of those games, I think he had one good game. But anyway, I think that's a really good recipe for a good week, and his price has dropped significantly because he hasn't seen much action in the past couple of weeks.
Evan, how are you thinking about this one? It has a team total above 50 points, which is sort of rare this week. And we have Falcons who are active, but what do you think their involvement is, I think, for Julio and Tevin Coleman in particular?
Yeah, to be clear, like, I'm not, when I was like, what about, the Peyton Barber ownership projection, that's not a criticism of your guys' ownership projections, because I know that those are good. Those are good. It's like, what brings people to that, because I know that it'll probably be like, give or take, 18 to 24%, something like that, or, maybe 16 to 24%, at the end of the day. But are you guys looking at, and if you don't want to give away the special sauce either, that's fine, but are you guys looking at like other sites' projections to bring you there, or are you guys like, listening to the noise, or like, and again, if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, Alex? Like the theory behind the ownership projections is that these are real people filling out their lineups. Do it. So to be able to like calculate that well, you take an aggregate from a lot of different sources of where people are leaning and trending this week. I'm assuming that people are just putting these projections in Cruncher, and with him at 3,600 on DraftKings, it's like to fit in Davante Adams and Kittle. You need to have some real cheap throwaway plays like Dwayne Washington and Peyton Barber.
Look, he's really cheap, and so that means that he only needs 16 rushes for 68 yards and 3 catches for 40 yards and maybe a half touchdown to get where you need him to be. You know what I'm saying? But man, I mean, he really has almost no upside, really. So, an ownership projection like that, which again, I don't doubt the ownership projection. It's like, how do people arrive at that?
I've noticed I think it's a strong correlation for some of our, and obviously Alex knows this much more depth than I have, but it's something I've noticed whenever there's a really egregious value proposition, particularly one that Fantasy Cruncher has with their projections. It's like looking at Fantasy Cruncher right now, and they're a partner of ours. They do a fantastic job with their product. Right now, he would be the second best value in terms of projections right now. So Royce Freeman's projected for 3.5% or 3.5x value. Barber's 3.3x. So I think if you are relying on an optimizer, I think they're all probably going to be pretty close in terms of where Barber falls as a value play. I'd rather go elsewhere. I agree with you. I'd rather go to Jeff Wilson. I'd rather pay up a little more to be contrarian there. But that's what the numbers show. People want to be Peyton Barber maniacs. I get it. I don't know. Alex, give me an under the radar spot since we're not Peyton Barber believers. He's not under the radar enough. Give me one more before we go to our contrarian picks.
Well, the contrarian pick I'll go with. I don't have the ownership projections up right now, but everyone's going to be on Royce Freeman with Philip Lindsay out. I think it might be contrarian to go with Devontae Booker, and I hope that he gets a lot of work in the passing game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Any thoughts on the Broncos offense, Evan?
I wanted to like Royce Freeman. I mean, he's 4,700 on FanDuel, right above minimum price. He profiles as a pretty good FanDuel back. He's got kind of touchdown upside, but he's been bad for an extended stretch. And he's on a team that has nothing to play for, that has lost a ton of interior offensive linemen, does not run block well recently. Philip Lindsay is disappointed lately, you know. And if they fall behind, it's going to be the Devontae Booker show. So I think that Devontae Booker profiles perfectly as a great contrarian, PPR, DraftKings style, low-cost running back play.
Yes, especially the ownership difference between those two. Freeman currently projected for 17.4% ownership. Again, just another value play that'll come up a lot on optimizers. Whereas Booker is projected for just 2% ownership right now for the Broncos. So that could be a good leverage play. Let's also talk about one last spot. I have to do it because I think it's an important one. Josh Allen at home versus the Dolphins. This is my under the radar spot. Josh Allen now back under 5%.
Why are people laughing at this? Why are people laughing at this?
No, I just know that you guys laugh at my Josh Allen. Not you as much, Evan.
I don't. No, yeah. I have been on your side from day one, Spags. You have.
No, that's fair. I get the feedback every week though, where people are like, we're talking Josh Allen again. Look, I'm a Josh Allen believer, especially.
Can you explain the psychology behind that?
People have a hard time rationalizing a good real life quarterback from a good fantasy quarterback.
Yes.
And numbers wise too, even on paper, if you look at Josh Allen, it doesn't make sense unless you really look at air yards and get rushing value added. I mean, I assume you have a similar, what are your holistic thoughts on Josh Allen as a talent?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be playing tight end by 2021.
Big boy.
He really is. But he's an awesome fantasy player. Fantasy player. He runs with conviction. He runs with power. He can make guys miss. He has legit speed. He loves to run. Mm-hmm.
He likes getting hit.
He likes getting hit. Yeah. And he's like, yeah. And he throws the ball downfield. And those are high variance throws, okay? So, hey, Robert Foster loses, the ball in the sun, and and Josh Allen loses an 82-yard touchdown. Let's do a little quick math. How many points is that? 82. What's 20? I mean, it's like 4 plus. All right, we'll give him 3 points. All right, 7 points. Okay, we'll give him 7 points. He lost 7 points because Robert Foster lost the deep ball in the sun. Okay, and he finished with 14 last week. He finished with 14. Josh Allen. So 14 plus 7 is 21, which would have taken him to being the quarterback 11 last week. And that was a good week for quarterbacks. Okay. Mm-hmm. So look, there's definitely some high variance factors to factor in here. He's also been awesome in fantasy. The Dolphins have gotten destroyed by dual threat quarterbacks. Josh Allen himself had the quarterback 2 game against him. Mitchell Trubisky ripped him up. Deshaun Watson ripped him up. So I think that, and Josh Allen, again, no one wants to go play in freaking Buffalo in January or late December, right? So, and the Dolphins, everyone's getting fired there. Everyone's getting fired. So this is a team that legit might not show up, and Josh Allen's just out here having fun, dunking on haters. I am rooting for Josh Allen this week. I'm awfully tempted to play him in cash. I'm awfully tempted because, man, I mean, even last week, that was his worst week that he's had in 6 or 7 games, and he had 14 points. I love Josh Allen this week.
Yeah, he had to get there with the garbage time Zay Jones touchdown, but he did, he eventually figured out the Rubik's Cube. That was the Belichick defense. I thought it was more we can build on that. We can build on that. Alex, give me your Josh Allen thoughts. Since now the show is aligned against hating on Josh Allen.
I mean, I liked it a lot better when you were on Josh Rosen because it was easier to kind of just –
That was a fleeting love interest. It just led me to the correct Josh. Much like The Bachelor, I need to get my final rose to the correct Josh.
Josh Allen, I have projected as a good play individually, but the problem comes when you're trying to pair him up with the rest of the team because the issue is that you have Isaiah McKenzie, Robert Foster, Zay Jones, all kind of splitting targets somewhat equally, and then LaShawn McCoy is back in the mix. So I'm just not. I'm finding it pretty hard to figure out one guy that has.
I'll just tell you, it's Robert Foster.
I think it's an onslaught of Bills this week with Foster and Zay Jones because they're
both
getting
Jason Kroom? What about Jason Kroom?
Not as big on Jason Kroom.
Jason Kroom last week played a career-high 78% of the Bills' offensive snaps, had 4 catches for 55 on 6 targets, and this week gets to play the Dolphins, who are like one of the worst tight end defense in the league. So don't sleep on Jason Kroom either. It's a Bills onslaught week. I agree with you, but you can't really bring it back with anybody though. That's a problem. That's your real problem.
Yeah, I mean Drake had the most snaps last week, which I think we had seen some reports about him being in practice and being active and all of that. But the touches were pretty close to even with him and Ballage and Brandon Bolden there. Alex, I guess, so if you were to play Josh Allen, what percentage of Josh Allen would you play knowing that he is under 5% ownership?
Yeah, I'm just not on him. Sorry, man.
I thought we had one more shot, but it's fine.
That's a lot of money to donate, Osimo.
Yeah, it's honestly Zay Jones. If I had Zay Jones in one lineup last week instead of Ballage, I would have actually taken down, I think, one of the play action. No, the play action actually is what I would have taken down, which hurt quite a bit, as you might imagine, not winning in the play action. But Zay Jones, I just like everything this Bills team is doing. They just air it out. They play literally like they're playing arcade mode on Madden. And it's
the most vertical passing offense in the NFL. The most vertical passing offense in the NFL. And also an offense that doesn't discourage their quarterback from running. It's like a gift from God to fantasy football players. And fantasy football players are like, no. I don't want to use these guys,
Josh Allen's like a big Midwestern Kyler Murray. That's how he's playing right now. He's unreal. He's a fun guy to watch who will also commit some colossal errors. So don't get me wrong, but I think it's not going to happen versus these Dolphins who are not playing as many guys now. I think Xavier Howard's supposed to be out, I believe. So that's not a terrifying spot for him. But let's go contrarian picks. Alex, who is your contrarian QB for this regular season finale for us?
Let me pull up the ownership.
I mean, should we just say agree on Josh Allen's bags for us?
Oh yeah, mine is on paper as Josh Allen. So yeah, that's fine for us. I'm telling you, man, I'm gonna go nuts on Josh Allen this week. And at least I know he's gonna try. You can't say that about a lot of the guys this week.
I had to scroll down pretty far to get to mine, but I will go with Nick Mullins at 4,700 on DraftKings, 0.6% ownership. I think if you like Kittle this week, you gotta like Mullins. The passing yards going to be pretty concentrated because of the absence of a lot of the wide receivers, like Evan mentioned. So I really like going with Jeff Wilson, Mullins, Kittle stack, and then it's like really easy to run it back with one of the Rams players.
All right, Evan, we're just going with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, easy one.
All right, cool. We're both so 2 Josh Allens for contrarian QB picks. I'm glad we got there. Josh Allen, we've been hanging the flag all year. Alex, back to you then for contrarian running back. If you want to pick Josh Allen for running back, all out.
Well, I will go with Devontae Booker. I think that looking at the game log from last week, he got a significant amount of action, compared to what other people must be thinking that the split's going to be like. So I think that he's going to get more work than people expect. Royce Freeman's not going to be as good, and Booker is going to be getting a lot more workload, which is going to translate to fantasy points, especially in PPR.
Yeah. How about Evan, contrarian running back for you?
Can you do yours first?
Yeah. I'm going to go Sony Michel. I just like under 6% ownership. And again, I just don't think the Pats are going to get too creative and exotic when they're playing the Jets. You could just be beaten by the run, and Sony can have 20 carries and have a nice week and take him into the playoffs. So Sony for me.
Yeah, that's like a gimme. I think that's like an easy one. That's a really strong one. I'll go with Darren Sproles. He has to be like right around minimum, and it has to be on DK. But what's his price actually on DK?
He is. Where are you at, Philadelphia? He is at 4,400 on DK, but 3% ownership, so still contrarian.
All right, I guess I'll go with him. I liked him last week, but I don't think we really talked about him that much. I wrote him up positively in my article. I think he's just the best option for the Eagles' backfield right now, and I think they kind of know it. Josh Adams, the shine is kind of worn off. He's been fumbling, been inefficient on the ground, doesn't contribute anything in the air. So every time that Josh Adams is in the game, like the safeties are like, oh, here we go. Like they creep up like, I'm going to get the tackle. No, I'm going to get the tackle. I'm going to get the tackle. So I think Darren Sproles just gives them more diversity on offense. We'll go that way.
One interesting contrarian RB play on this particular game, Adrian Peterson, I think jumped out at me. He was one of my potential picks. I agree. Getting a ton of carries, and Philly's not good versus the run. I don't know. Contrarian wide receiver, Alex, to close us out.
Well, I do like Andy Jones again this week, but since I used him last week, I mean, I got 5 targets last week, but I'll give everyone a new pick this week. I like Calvin Ridley. This kind of goes along with my pick earlier in the show of Matt Ryan being a good sneaky option. But I noticed that Ridley's ownership is it's pretty low. It's in the 2% range on DraftKings. So I think that he obviously has huge potential every week, and if he's going overlooked, I think I might build a stack around him and maybe Julio or Sanu.
All right, that's a good contrarian one. Evan, how about you, contrarian wide receiver?
What is your ownership projection on DeAndre Hopkins this week?
Let's see. Hopkins. Sorry, one sec. He is at 12% projected ownership.
People are going to play him against Jalen Ramsey. I was hoping they wouldn't.
Apparently people not afraid of the Jags anymore.
We talked about Bourne. We talked about Kendrick Bourne. What about Keenan Allen? What's he projected at?
Allen is projected at 10% ownership.
Okay. Oh, man, I wanted to go a little bit deeper.
Bourne is under 1%, so if you want to go with
one. Oh, well, that's a freebie. What's his price on DK? I know he's 4,900 on FanDuel.
3,800 on DK. Very cheap.
That's awesome. I think he's a safe play. I don't know about his upside, but definitely like just with everybody else out, it's like, how could he not have upside? Mm-hmm. So, and I think he's a safe play. So, that's definitely where I'll go. Kendrick Bourne below 1%. Wow.
Yes, surprising it's that low, but there you go. So he is the last wide receiver standing. Could be a good contrarian pick. I'm going to go Zay Jones. I'll stack with my contrarian QB just because Zay Jones did well for me last week. I think he could have actually had a bigger week if he weren't going against Stephon Gilmore, and now he's not going against Stephon Gilmore. So I think that all grades out well for me. $4,000 on DK, under 5% ownership. Give me Zay Jones. Let's die with the Bills offense. What a legendary offense to go down with. There you go. Those are our thoughts for Week 17. Alex, any parting words before I do our closing spiel?
Do you guys want to skip the fade of the week, or are we going to do that?
Yeah. I didn't have that on my list, but give me your fade of the week then.
My fade of the week is Jamal Williams because he's supposed to be one of the top 10 highest owned guys, and I think that Packers are going to pass this week. I don't think they're going to be necessarily trying to optimize their chances of winning. I think they're going to be trying to put up some stats for their home crowd. So I think that's going to be revolve a lot around Adams and not as much around Williams. So even though he had a big week last week, I'm not anticipating that being a very promising situation this week.
All right, Evan, who's your fade of the week?
Dwayne Washington. So when the Saints sign somebody like Tim Hightower on Saturday, does Dwayne Washington's does his ownership projection immediately plummet or?
Yeah, I would think if there's some ambiguity about who's starting, I think it would cause it to plummet. Yeah.
Yeah, strange. But yeah, I will go with Dwayne Washington.
And I'll go with Peyton Barber as my fade. I just don't think he's that good of a running back, and you can find better ones at that price or slightly above him. So there we go. Those are our fades. Alex, give me now parting words before we close it out.
Well, it's been an awesome regular season talking football with you guys. Thanks to everyone for supporting the show. We're going to keep it going for the next few weeks of postseason, so you guys can look forward to that. Thanks, Josh, for producing. And especially looking forward to next week doing the Power Hour. Chris and Evan, you guys might be providing more of the advice next week, but it'll be fun nonetheless.
What are you going to be drinking? What are you going to
drink? Make sure to tune in. Keep your eyes peeled on our social channels. Follow at AwesemoDFS on Twitter. Especially follow Evan Silva and Chris Spags as well. But follow AwesemoDFS. He will tell you when we're going to go live, because this will be one that we'll make sure to actually live stream and put out there at a time frame that people can see and bask in Alex's glory. Hopefully just your glory. And make sure to like this video. Leave a comment down below. Give us your favorite contrarian pick for the week. It's week 17. Get weird with it. We want to know what you think. We want to know who you think is right with our picks. Is double Josh Allen right as a contrarian pick? Probably. But tell us about it in the comments down below. It can't be wrong. Josh Allen can never be wrong. So go like the video. Leave in the comments your favorite contrarian pick. And that's it for us this week. Thank you, guys. We'll be back for playoff editions of On the Contrary. So keep subscribing to the channel. Keep your eyes peeled. And we wish you guys the best of luck and a happy and healthy new year. So good luck, guys.